As soon as it flips over to 6:30, we'll be live. Okay. Live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome into the clinical workshop series. If you're new here, if you have no idea why you're here, I will tell you. My name is Dr. Jody Carrington. I'm a clinical psychologist, and every month we do a little bit of a mental health related workshop series around here. And this month we are talking about social media and phone use and safety with our kids, this whole abyss that many of us know nothing about. So we're going to dive into that today. So I'm so glad you're here. I can see some people jumping into the community. You can see everybody else's name up there if you'd like. Just be mindful of what your screen name is, because if it's your full name, people then know who you are. And if that's okay by you, that's okay by me. But I just wanted you to know that. And please interact on there, send questions. We are at the end of this, we have 30 minutes to ask or to answer questions. And so anything that you have, just throw it in there now. And Marty is with me, and so she's going to pull them all together. Des is on the back end, and then we jump into those for a half an hour at the end of tonight. So I'm really loving these more and more. And if there's something that you want me to talk about specifically in one of these, mental health workshops, I'm so happy to do it. And so you can send us a note or a DM or an email or any of those kind of things. And so tonight was a really important one because I get a lot of questions around screen time and the effect of social media on the moods of our children, the risks of all exploitation, I guess, bullying, on gaming, all of those things that happen so many times because we have no script for this. Okay, so be prepared to step in tonight. Tonight for me, as all of these clinical workshops are, despite the fact that I'm a registered clinical psychologist, this is not considered therapy. This is very much about the provision of resources and insight and my opinion only on some things that I've either researched or I have some experience with, or I have an opinion about. So there is a list of resources that I put together. You can follow along as I talk, or you can get them later about some of the things that I'm going to say that's attached on this platform. And I feel like we should say things like everything is copyrighted and like all those things, but I don't really think that's true. So it just sounds like more official when I say that, but it's really not true. Anyway. As I start every time that I do a public event, or not every time, but every time that I speak publicly, I always try to ensure that I acknowledge the lands on which I have created all of the content for tonight on. And this happened, of course, on Treaty 7 land, which is now known as the central part of the province of Alberta. It is home of the Blackfoot Confederacy. The unceded territory is where I am raising my babies and doing all of this stuff for you, which is home of the Siksika, the Kainai, the Piikani, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, the Stoney Nakoda First Nation, and the Métis Nation Region 3. I think that the answer to most things that we talk about is simply acknowledgement, and tonight is no exception. There has been a significant shift in our lifetimes. So if you're a parent watching this, for the first time in history, we have access to something, a communication tool that none of us grew up with. Yeah. People are often worried about social media with the children and the influence and all those things, which all of those things I have massive concerns about. But this is the first time in history that us as parents have so much access to our children and opinions about our children and other people watching what our children are doing. They can phone us at any time. It's exhausting. I tell this story all the time, okay? One generation, when I left for Red Deer College in 1993, Okay. My Ev, my mom talks about this all the time, that she would stay up late, every weekend when I'd come home. It was horrific. She wouldn't sleep because I would be out, and she would be worried about, are you coming home? She wouldn't sleep till we got home. I mean, even if we called, it was 2 or 3 or whatever time it was in the morning. Okay, we got in, everybody's safe. Okay, good, we go to bed. She said, when I shipped you off to college, it was like I couldn't worry anymore because there was no ability to connect to you. And I knew that if something happened, I would obviously find out about it. But in the meantime, right, I worried about you, I thought about you, but oftentimes I wasn't waiting for you. And part of the issue that I think so much now that we haven't really addressed in our human race is just what this inundation of data has done to not only our children, but to us as the big people. Okay, so we're going to acknowledge some of that tonight. So I will kick off tonight by just sort of talking about social media and what it was designed for. We are neurobiologically wired for connection. We, as a human race, will never automate the need for connection and relationship. At the same time, the hardest thing we will ever do is look into the eyes of the people we love. So despite the fact that somebody made the rule in this human race that we are neurobiologically wired, that we have to do this shit together. Okay. Also, P.S. I might swear. And by no way do I intend to offend anybody. When I'm talking about hard stuff, that comes out. So if you have little babies in your area or you are concerned about language, just be aware of that and maybe put your ears on. Okay. Part of the issue is we are neurobiologically wired for connection. You disconnect from infants, they die. This is the way that the human race has evolved. Huh? Now, the thing that we will never automate is relationship, but the hardest thing we will do is look into the eyes of the people we love. That's always been true. But for the first time, perhaps the first generation now, we have never had so many opportunities to not look. We can buy groceries online. We can engage in therapy online. We can consume information, go to school online. We don't have to leave our offices. When we, go back, I think about nurses or physicians, even police officers, you do your work, and historically you'd have to come back to one sort of central location. You can do a lot of your charting on your phone. You can do case files on your thing. The necessity to look at each other and be in the same physical space as other human beings is becoming more and more automated, which is a problem. Okay. I will say that technological advances in and of themselves are not the problem. I am so grateful to be alive in a season where we are able to connect to my parents when my children, can't see them because we live in different communities. I'm so grateful that I get to do therapy or consult in rural communities who do not otherwise have access to resources. I'm so hopeful that because of technological advances in this lifetime, pancreatic cancer won't be a death sentence. That's what I hope, because of technological advances. There's so much goodness about this. And now the world of AI is so fascinating and so hotly debated, because part of the issue with technological advances is not necessarily how good they can be for us, how they can assist in connection and communication. The problem always lies in how we use it. That's the issue. Because our need to stay connected will always be present. The anonymity that social media provides a false layer of disconnection that still allows you to stay connected. However, the risk is fantastic. And primarily, the inundation of data that our brains are not designed for, but that we now operate with all the time. I mean, in university, in this generation, I didn't start with a computer. I didn't get my degree, any of the degrees with the access of Googling, what is the history of psychology? I had to figure that shit out and go to a library and take a card out and do all those kind of things. Doesn't make me better or worse. In fact, I'm so grateful for this moment that when I watch our kids, put together a project, they have access at their fingertips to information It is also creating a paucity in creative thinking. It's also, how do you find these things? How do you figure them out? How do you put them together when it's so easily accessible? And the benefit is it's so easily accessible. I mean, all of these things are not necessarily good or bad when we look at them from an evolutionary perspective. This is what we hope in the world will happen. We will get better and easily more able to connect to things. Okay. So I just want to preface this by, I'm going to focus a lot tonight on the negatives, the fearful things that happen, as I see my daughter just Snapchatted something, around this place of the interweb. So I'm going to talk about some of the negative things tonight, but I really want you to be clear that there are so many benefits about it. It's not the issue. It's about sort of how we use it that becomes the problem. Okay. So let's start with social media. Social media was designed to create community. Okay. It was this sort of invention to allow us to connect greater around this world. And while, they do focus on, function as virtual communities, it's easy to forget how many people can be privy to online conversations between friends. We don't have that filter for sure, that, just how much when, it seems like it disappears or it's there for a short period of time, or you can just delete a photo or delete a thing. The ability for it to sort of stay present forever becomes really easy to forget. Okay. So that's why many teens may, without even thinking, reveal vital information of the kind that's the most useful for identity theft or other criminal acts, right? And so many times we're putting information out there, and our kids, let's remember, don't have a prefrontal cortex to make really good decisions often. And there is a level of impulsivity to most children. And so part of the thing that I think about quite often in the world of social media is not that, like, yes, it allows the connection. It allows, our kids to stay involved, connected to their cousins who none of them live in Olds, Alberta, Canada in this moment. We have access to all of those things. Part of the problem, again, is that when we, the anonymity, the rules around this have not been scripted yet, because this is still such a new way of operating for so many people. Now, I looked at some data around this. The average age at which children received their first phones was 11.6 years old. With, in the last 2 years, phone acquisition climbing steeply between now 10.7 years and 12.5 years of age. Now, there's lots of conversations around what is the perfect age for a kid to get a phone? When is it right? When is it not? Does anybody need a phone? And I've tried to sort of talk about, access to social media a lot in here. And let me just say, before we talk about anything, there is no right way for your child. You know your baby best, and their ability to handle things, their ability to come to you with things. There are guidelines that is suggested that we'll talk a lot about, is the more access you have. In fact, I'll share this study with you because I wrote a note about it. Initial results from a groundbreaking study by the National Institute of Health revealed that MRIs found significant differences in the brains of children who use smartphones, tablets, and video games more than 7 hours a day. We know for sure that the more access to smartphones disturbs sleep. So this is the truth without question, that when you are engaging your brain in constant data, that there is no break when you're out, going for a run, or, playing with your friends, or even reading a book. When there's constant visual images and input of data, your brain struggles to take a break. And all of us needs that. That won't change, right? So there are neurophysiological imaging results that would suggest 7 hours, which is not hard to do. If your kid checks their phone in the morning, if they check their phone frequently in the afternoon, the data is really interesting that kids are sort of checking their Snap messages or their text messages or whatever that deal is multiple times, 6, 7, 8, 80 times an hour. And when we think about sort of that inundation of data, what becomes really difficult, right, is like, then how do we navigate this process? And so the suggestion is, in terms, Andrew Huberman just did a podcast on this recently about, what is the safe way? And outside of work hours, computer usage, those kind of things, the thought is for many children, an hour a day is considered safe. Now, again, these are guidelines. You can do things differently. I end up doing things very differently in our own personal house because, sometimes that, this is how kids communicate with each other. This is where they do, they're gaming. Sometimes I'm too tired to engage in anything with them. And so it's like, yep, no, I'm with my, okay, well, good. Okay. But some of this data, I think, is more important for us to have so that we sort of start to understand a little bit about mostly the importance of it disturbing sleep. And when and how we use technology becomes really important. So when kids overuse technology, whatever that looks like, the constant stimulation of the brain can cause the hormone cortisol, okay, so that's the primary hormone in stress, to rise. So too much cortisol can inhibit a kid from feeling calm. So cortisol is the thing that kind of makes you raise your shoulders, okay? So the loss of sort of calmness can lead to serious anxiety disorders if you're constantly hyped, right? I've seen our kids, they see something online, or they, see a story or an image or whatever the deal is. And I often think about what they do with that sometimes if they don't have anywhere to put it. They've thought about things, or they've seen a meme, or like, what does this guy mean when he says these things? All of that becomes sort of an interesting piece where when there isn't really sort of a lot of room in the brain to sort of to make sense of that. One of the stats I wanted to share with you in particular is that, like, suicide rates are on the rise, especially for girls between the ages of 10 and 14 years of age. This blows my mind. 10 and 14 years of age. For this group, suicidal rates have tripled over the past 15 years. Tripled. The past 15 years correspond significantly with our accessibility to smartphones. And so significant conversation is centered around the exposure and to comparison and the inundation of data that makes it just seem impossible to live up to what other people appear to be doing, okay? That, coupled with impulsivity in that age group, make our children particularly at risk, okay? To that end, I also found this piece of research that I thought was really interesting. New research shows that increased time spent on social media is a risk factor for eating disorders. So increased use of social media has, contributed in part to the shifting demographics of those affected by eating disorders. There has been an increase in younger individuals, including tweens as young as 9 and 10 years old, being then very conscious of what bodies are supposed to look like and what that is. So in addition, showing over-edited, filtered photos, social media sites also offer users ways to find content like weight loss challenges or videos of purging techniques and unhealthy diets. The access to data, information, intended at one point to be an information hub, an educational source, has, as you know, without left to our own devices, there is the accessibility to images, information, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but like pornographic experiences that are far beyond what most kids' curiosity can handle. And what's so critically important to consider is that the access is easy. The access to other people is easy. And tonight for me is really just about the more you know. It doesn't mean you even need to change the behavior. Okay, so let's take that off the table. There's no sense of, I know I felt guilt as a parent all the time, but this is not the intention of it at all. We're navigating new in this space. This is more about, here's what I know to be true in this space. Okay. The access to things like, how to navigate an eating disorder, or what it looks like when people have sex in the world of pornography, none of that represents what really happens in real life. And our ability to have a place to talk through or about or with some of the images or the data that kids get is going to become even more important than ever. Okay, because even if you restrict usage of phones, even if you restrict access to video games, this doesn't mean that you are excused from having those hard conversations with our children, because so much of this inundation of data is accessible everywhere. They have sleepovers, they're in the hockey dressing room, they're, engaging wherever, right? And oftentimes we try to our very best to shelter and inhibit. And in a developmentally appropriate way, what I think is going to become most important is the ability to have conversations like we would have never considered around our kitchen table growing up. And I mean, it's interesting when we dive into some of these conversations with our kids, right? To watch how either Aaron's diving all in and he's doing that, or he's in the corner rocking. And I'm like, no, we have to talk about this. Like, what does it look like? What are some of the things you've seen online? And I'll talk about this in a second. Okay. So why is internet safety such a big deal? So you can kind of guess where I'm going to go with this maybe. But I would say that sort of so many people that I talk to, so many parents that I talk to, fear the possibility that their child could come into contact with strangers who mean to do them harm. And we all think we're sort of immune to it. I mean, I've talked to so many parents who have been just obliterated by or horrifically violated by somebody accessing their social media or the social media of their children. Now, the risk of that happening through online interactions and through social media in particular is very real. Very real. And that's because sensitive information isn't only a sort of available to scammers hoping to profit off of it in terms of identity theft, but carelessly sort of spread information and thoughtless interactions with unknown people can also put our kids at risk of encountering stalkers, predators, and others who could harm them physically or emotionally. So I'm just gonna give the definition of some of these things in this place, because we use like stalker and predator and all these kind of things, luring, in interchangeable ways. But let me just clear what we're talking about, okay? So let's start with stalker. So one threat that's easier to avoid is that of a stalker, a person who gradually gathers information about a person to harass them or violate their privacy, okay? Oftentimes when we're talking about our kids, this is how we check out people. If you're ever going to go for a job interview, you can very well guess that people are looking at your Facebook page. People are checking what you posted. What do you look like? What's in your family system? What is happening? All that is, if you don't want that to be a thing, then you just cannot engage in social media because it is so easily accessible, even with some privacy settings. Okay, so being very conscious of the pictures that you post, and so you should remind your teen. One of the suggestions is the reminder of our kids to our teens about that even the blandest photo can reveal information about their age, what school they go to, and even the times that they're most or least likely to be alone. Okay, so the intention often to just post something or snap something can be really innocent in this way. So privacy settings may help prevent the wrong people from getting that information. But teens should also use that awareness to restrict what they'll give away in their profiles, their pictures, or even in an ordinary exchange of comments or messages. The point here is just really even having a subtle conversation about this, an important conversation about let's be careful, okay? Sending even, there's lots of conversations about the use of photographs and, people then being able to identify or use. And, what about if we want to share this as a way with our families, making those profiles private, if that's a concern for you, becomes really, really critically important to consider. Okay, so stalker is just somebody who finds information and sort of harasses you or finds you or knows where you live or does those things. The next step that I find, concerning is this idea of predators. And I think this is, probably the thing that we talk, that I've talked in session a lot about. The definition of a predator is people who work to gain a kid's confidence, either to build an inappropriate relationship or to lure them into inappropriate behavior. So this is obviously a much bigger online safety concern. Many of the most popular social media sites or apps including things like Instagram and Snapchat, are effectively electronic messaging services. And beyond the world of social media, teens can often get drawn into online forums, chat rooms, or other venues where they can have extended exchanges with people that they don't know. Now, I'm going to give you some in the list of resources. I've talked about a number of them that are most common. Most of this I didn't know anything about before I started prepping for this. Okay. Now, the interesting thing about this is that, again, let's keep this in mind. We want to connect to other people. We're curious. We want to get together and see what other people are saying or doing. But I think the thing to consider, right, is that these virtual interactions have been the place where online predators live. According to statistics put out by the FBI and the United Nations, at any given time, there are 750,000 predators online looking to foster inappropriate and sometimes illegal relationships with teenagers. This is a motivated effort, given whatever's going on in their life, to figure out where they hang out. And obviously, they'll hang out in places that have been identified as commonly used by teenagers or adolescents, children, kids, YouTube, Roblox, Minecraft. All of these have access to chat rooms and engagements that then the ability is then to pull them onto a different site. Meet me over in Omegle, meet me over in Chat Roulette, meet me over wherever, okay? And when we think about this, you know, $750,000 or 750,000 predators online, engaging in conversations that tend to look like this now, next thing we're going to talk about, online luring, which is commonly refers to the process through which someone communicates with a child online for a sexual purpose. The Criminal Code of Canada, so I'm up here in Canada, defines a luring offense as someone using telecommunications. So for example, chat, messaging, texting, to communicate with someone they believe to be under the age of 18 in order to commit a designated offense against the child. And I've had the pleasure, the benefit of interacting with some RCMP officers who worked in ICE, which is the Child Exploitation Unit, and it is fascinating to me, and in my conversations with them, how easy it is to do this, and how vulnerable our children are in this moment to just want to be connect to people and to easily engage in, oh my God, you like Minecraft too? Or like, yeah, of course, let me send you a picture of my dog. Do you have a dog? Oh my God, send me a picture of you. Send me a picture of you without a shirt. All of these things really are very innocent, seemingly, in their evolution. And so much of this, you know, is we think our kids will be smarter than this. We think they will sort of be ahead of this game. And so much of this often, you know, is true. But sometimes having this conversation about an area that most of us know nothing about is tricky. So individuals seeking to access kids for a sexual purpose may connect with kids, you know, at any age through online games and apps that have chat or a video chat capability. And you know, one of my dear friends who worked in the Child Exploitation Unit for 7 years would say, you know, that many of their jobs is to act as 13, 14-year-old girls, 12-year-old girls, and see if they can reverse lure somebody into this process. Hey, I'm just looking for a friend. I'm 13 and I'm just hanging out tonight. What are you doing? And to watch to see who responds, how they engage. Can you meet me here? How old are you? What does that look like? It's super easy for those things to happen, unfortunately. And there have been bad outcomes. Teens have been lured into abductions and into sexual situations and have been subjected to, you know, sexual assault as a result of relationships that have begun online. And I remember this story, you know, that we heard once, and I'm going to, you know, some of these, this data I'm going to change a little bit. But we were having this conversation with a mom, and, you know, she just said, I am very involved in the community. I'm a school teacher. I'm very aware of, you know, what's happening in social media. She said, my 13-year-old son was playing video games really innocently, I thought, and ended up in a chat with somebody who then eventually, you know, asked for a picture of him, asked for a picture of him with no clothes on. And in the most innocent way, or, maybe not, sort of the need for continued connection, this kid sent images, and don't worry, this won't go anywhere. I won't tell anybody. And then we're going to talk about extortion here in a minute. But then what happens is, if you tell anybody, I will share these pictures. I know where you live. And this poor babe was concerned that this person who was threatening, don't tell your mom, don't tell your dad, don't tell anybody, or I'll come and find you. And Google Maps allows you to take pictures of somebody's exact residence. And this kid was then waiting at the end of his driveway every night, thinking that this predator was going to come directly to their house. And you can see how this kid is very scared that he's now like put his family at risk, that he's put his whole life at risk. And kids then think that the disappointment is going to be so great, and what if these pictures get out, and oh my god, I'm so embarrassed that I was so stupid to make those decisions, or to make those choices. And I think that when we think about predatory behavior, here's some of the things I want you just to think about. Some of the things that are quite common. Predators will want to have private conversations with their targets. And so just having conversations, with people, that your friend is not your friend unless you know them first offline. It is very unsafe and unclear to create friendships where you have no physical proof that the person is who they say they are. Okay. So if you have met them in real life, obviously, then developing friendships online makes much more sense to me. But part of the conversation is, private conversations with their targets is the first. They're going to get them off of a Roblox or a Minecraft or a YouTube comment section. Hey, let's go over here and chat more about this. Obviously, we both really love Harry Potter, or whatever the deal is. Okay, so that number one, let's get you off on somewhere that is not public. Insist that their online relationships be kept a secret. So if there's any conversation, this makes me sad that, our kids or, people can't have, use this as a platform to just create relationships, but really it's becoming, so tricky. And so one of those tells, again, is this idea of let's keep it secret. Oftentimes, they explain to me that they will ask their targets to provide personal information like their addresses, their full names, or phone numbers. Okay. When those questions start coming, this, how many stories do you hear? Perhaps even we've experienced this of, giving credit card information over the phone, or, somebody like, this is the bank calling, we've had a breach of your file. Can you just give me this number? Right. And holy shit. Yeah, of course. The indication is we're often innocently doing these things, and then we're down into a place that becomes really difficult. But again, predators will tend to do some stalking online to uncover information about their targets, and then make a show of how much they know, which of course gets scary. Ask their targets a barrage of questions in order to get their targets to release more personal information. Oh my God, tell me more about you. Oh, you sound amazing. Like, what's your favorite thing? Where do you, what's your favorite coffee? Where do you go? What do you do? Whatever. Try to convince their targets that everything they're doing and all the information they're revealing is perfectly normal. People do this all the time on here. Like, why would you not do things like that? Like, come on, like this. I have all of the security. This is Snapchat. Everything goes away in 24 hours, whatever the deal is. Yeah? All of those kind of techniques are quite common. And of course, we talked a little bit about sexting and sextortion. That is really where, you're sending sexual images, whatever that looks like, naked photographs, experiences of, engaging in sexual acts in a videotape or online for the pleasure of other people. Often in a trusted, safe relationship, this makes sense for people. However, so many times, sexting and sextortion is a whole other world that we need to start talking about more. If there is an image online that was shared without your consent, there is now this place, I put it in the show notes, about needhelpnow.ca, where you can learn how to take action to help get that content removed. Okay, so there's now people that are very much aware of those things. But again, just the conversation with our children about the fact that what you put online lives there forever. And I know as a 10-year-old, you're not thinking about a job getting into university. As a 12-year-old, you're just trying to make friends in this moment. You don't, you do want to post that, or send a video message or a voice message, like you're a piece of whatever and everybody hates you. Okay. That now lives forever. And so even just having those conversations again and again and again will be important for kids to get that understanding. Okay. Because this is a thing that's new to us. We're like, what? This is, and so the chat rooms that I was talking about before, I've just put a list of them in the resources that I just wanted you to be aware of. None of these I'd heard before. Okay. So things like Omegle and chatroulette.com. Chatroulette and Omegle are where these two, I think, started the most. So when I was speaking to, some of these RCMP officers, they would say, Chatroulette is a chat app that was really started to sort of create relationships online, and the intention apparently was quite good. And basically, you are hanging out in the evening, you want to meet new friends in the area, you want to just chat with somebody because you're lonely, so you go onto Chatroulette and you put your photograph on, or you put your video camera on, and you're just like hanging out, and you just like want to and it's like roulette. You press a button and it goes and boom, somebody's pictures pop up and you're like, hey, oh, hi, how are you? Oh, I'm so good. Where are you? Oh, oh my gosh, no way, you're in Chicago. I'm here, like whatever that deal is. Okay. You can imagine how beneficial this might be for lonely people or people who are whatever, but you also can quickly understand how fucking wrong this can go in a heartbeat. And so oftentimes on these sites, there are people so desperate for connection, or they have their own specific perversion. And so you often get, somebody's photograph pops up and it's them naked or doing something, or whatever the deal is, in order to get the shock value, or who's going to engage in that response, or any of those kind of things. So there's other things like BazoomCam, ChatSpin, FaceFlow, Shaggle, Paltalk, Yubo. Some of those are more of those chat spaces that I didn't know anything about. And so it's interesting, I was asking my kids about this, and one of them said, oh yeah, no, I've heard about Omegle. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, I know how scary that is, because sometimes you can end up and, to see somebody. She's like, but sometimes I've heard of people, which means she's done this, or he's done this, or they've seen this happen, where you're having a sleepover, or you have a group of people together, and it's so fun to see who you'll get in the site, in the chat roulette site, right? And it's like, oh my God, what does that guy do? And this is gross. And the fact that this happens is news to me. Okay. Now I thought that I was fairly savvy in this department. I'm not. Okay. I'd never had a conversation with my children about this, right? Because I was like, the twins are 10. We're fine. Ash is 13. He's only just playing Beatles music. And so much about this that is where the vulnerability becomes an issue, right? Is that it is easy, because if I really struggle to make friends or have, social connections, or know that anybody is really important to me, sometimes it's how easy it can to sort of see another human being. And the sadness for me is that, oftentimes there can be good relationships or healthy relationships that start in this way, but the risk is just too great. In terms of sort of what could happen in this place. And so, all right. So those are some things just meant to scare the shit out of you. So mission accomplished for me anyway. Some of the other things that I, sort of looked at when I was prepping for tonight is, the world of online bullying. And I mean, this is so massive. This is such a conversation that I have many times with teachers and educators and parents, and in my practice and out of my practice and in our consultation. Here's the truth. Nearly half of US teens and North American teens, kids in the US and Canada, have been bullied or harassed online. Only 1 in 10 victims will inform a parent or a trusted adult of their abuse. Now that stat shocked me, right? Because typically they're not just receiving it. They've also doled it out in some ways. They don't want to get in trouble for that, whatever the deal is. Recent research indicates that kids who receive smartphones in elementary school versus later in childhood are more likely to be involved in cyberbullying. According to researchers, the increased risk of cyberbullying related to phone ownership could be tied to increased opportunity and vulnerability. It's the anonymity that makes this. People are hard to hate close up. People are also very difficult to be mean to when you're face to face, right? Relatively speaking. So I thought a lot about this, right? Because, our 10-year-olds have access to their iPads and to, kids messenger and Snapchat, all of these things that we're going to talk about in a second. But when you see kids, your children, here's some of the sort of things that sort of we tend to notice. When kids are getting bullied online, they might not want to talk about it, but when they start avoiding online activities, if they've been doing that before, such as like gaming or social media that they used to enjoy and yet don't seem to have, traded these activities for something else, it might be a question, something going on, is everything okay there? Sometimes when kids seem to be relieved when coming away from their computer or device, if they've just had an unpleasant experience, the eyes on matter so much in this process, using your devices when we're sitting together, so that I can monitor that in some ways. We'll talk about that in a minute. Seems to be, if your kid seems to be routinely dismayed by messages they receive or their interactions with other people on their phone, things like just really being much more secretive about their relationships online and, all of those things, all of those, signs in and of themselves might not be something to be really scared about, but certainly the observation of these things really matter. Okay. And to that point, I think the world of gaming is so interesting. Online games, just like neighborhood sports, can be an occasion for trash talk. It can also be a place where kids gather and they communicate and they talk about and they, engage in interaction with each other, which can be such a good thing. It can also easily, because of the anonymity, lead to things like harassment and bullying. And so, especially for kids whose social life revolves around an online community, the effect can be traumatic because it feels like these are, can be real relationships. And just like other types of bullying, keeping tabs on your kid's mood and behavior and looking up signs that there might be a problem, having access to their devices is so important. And I know, it's just like, this is the same conversations our parents would have had around whether you should read a kid's diary. And I think, I so think that kids need to know or have a place to put emotions and things they're going to say and do and all of those things. But the access to their friends and what they say and how they say it often needs some guidance. Because I say this all the time about kids. Kids are assholes. And I love working with kids. There are no 3 humans on this planet that I am more enamored with than my own 3 kids. I think they are the most remarkable people I've ever met. And I have so much hope for them. But they will require so much guidance in a space where there isn't a lot of scripts yet. For me as their mom, for Aaron as their dad, for any of us, right? And so navigating this thing together means the more conversation and access you have, the better. And I think what is so critical around the use of games and asking questions about it, sitting in when they're playing a match or a whatever the frig it's called, the things that they do. Learning how to play Fortnite or being clear on, what is this online game? Like, listen, I'm at fault of this. Asher and I had this conversation last night. Can I get this game so I can play with my buddy? Yeah. Of course. I really just want him to be connected. So yep, sure. No problem. Okay, well then it needs this and it needs that. And I need a credit card. Then I need that. Okay, time out. Let's just wait until I can see exactly what this is about and what happens here. Can you show me all of those things? Well, Mom, it's it's fine. I no doubt. I trust your judgment in this way. I know that your intention is always so good. I just need to know a little bit more about it before we engage in this. And like, how do you play it and what happens and what are the skins you can choose and what are the roles you can be? And, all of these things become really important. And the cool part about it is they'll tell you if you ask. And so much about it is we don't ask a lot. So I think that there's a few apps too that I wanted just to tell you about real quick. that I think are really, really critically important. How's our questions? Are we having any questions come across? Yeah. Okay. But some of the apps I want you to know about. Now, you're probably going to know about these anyways, but I put them in the notes. Okay, so TikTok is a thing that everybody talks about. All right, it is a very popular app that is very trendy with the newest generation and lets you create and share short videos. The app has minimal privacy controls, and users can be exposed to cyberbullying and explicit content all the time. Okay, so like there's no way to navigate what somebody puts on there. To improve kids' safety, TikTok has updated its app so that users under 16 cannot receive or send private messages. But this can obviously be avoided through users falsifying their age. So, I mean, that's the problem. It's very difficult to control these when they're like, oh yeah, no, we have a filter. So TikTok is, I think, the place where, so many people talk about they get information. I have a TikTok account. It's the fastest growing app. It's remarkable how many people spend a lot of time getting data and information on TikTok. One of my, most trusted marketing advisors would say she spends the vast majority of her time learning about the world on TikTok because there's fantastic information there. So again, right, it's not that it's always bad stuff, but it's really not, if we're going to use it, it's sort of how, right, and the monitoring of that. And I am such at fault for this, because sometimes I'll be, watching the kids scroll through TikTok, which, I mean, they've been doing for 2 hours before that, and then I'm like, what the shit is that? Who's that? Why are they saying those things? Well, I don't know. I'm just watching them like create a sandwich out of a whatever. And I'm like, what do you mean? Well, they're fashioning that tomato to look like a penis. What? I know, right? Okay, time. Talk to me. What is happening here? All right. So that's the TikTok. Snapchat. Now, if you don't know what Snapchat is, do a little research, do a little deep dive, because if you have children in your life, this is an important thing to know. One of the world's most popular social media apps is this thing called Snapchat. Snapchat is interesting. It's a communication deal. It lets users take and share photos and videos that expire after 24 hours. So instead of like a just a text message where you could send, or like, remember back in the day when we had MSN Messenger? Do you remember this? You would like watch people type and you had to be like online and all those kind of things. Snapchat is basically this massively exploited. So you can put filters and you can make your face funny and your message is funny and you can snap pictures and show people where you're at. And this is very much like Be Real is another app that's sort of taken off of this. And so you're just supposed to take a picture of yourself in various situations, wherever you are in a moment, no filter it, and it's supposed to be real. Here's where I am right now, which didn't really fly very much, but that's the related app. But anyway, it's supposed to go away in 24 hours. So here's the thought. It's very different than Instagram or even TikTok. And it's this place of like, boom, I'm going to snap you and show you what I'm doing. I'm watching this snap. The other unfucking believable thing about Snapchat is that it has a location service on it. And if you turn your location on, you can see all of your followers on a snap map. You can see exactly where all of your friends are in this moment. All of the people who are on your snap map, even if they're not your friends, you like them here, you like them there, they can see you, their profiles are set to public. You can see where everybody is. I've had kids in my office before where, they were like, I got this snap today and it crushed my soul. Like, okay, let me see. What are we talking about? And they show me their snap map and it's like hundreds of snappers just on their little icons walking around. Okay, so you know where your friends are at all time. And that in and of itself is so good in so many ways, but it can be soul crushing when you can see people got together without you, or these people are talking about me, or they snap me, and who snapped that, and who's that, and they took a picture of this, and against my consent. And it's a myth that Snapchats go away forever, because data is data. Wherever there's an image sent, it's never truly disappears. The person on the receiving end can screenshot the photo before it disappears. And Snapchat can even be recovered. So there's a thought that it's over, it's done, but that's not the truth. It can really, you can see how it can make sexting okay. because it can seem like this is going to go away anyways, right? The seemingly risk-free messaging that might occur underage users to, or might encourage, I'm sorry, underage users to share inappropriate images with their friends. Their snap maps might be the scariest feature for me, because you can see where everybody is. They can see where your kids are. And I remember often, speaking to, parents about, like, threatening kids, like, if you shut off your snap map, I need to know where you are at all time. So it's this constant, it's also this, wonderful feature where if I'm worried about my kid coming home on time, or where are you right now, turn your snap map on, or you're not allowed to go out, right? It is also this tracking device that is, of course, quite easily thrown off. But anyway, all right. The other thing I wanted to talk about is I've learned about these things and I can't even tell you this. Okay, so secret photo albums. Did you know that there are countless apps on the App Store, such as something called Pre-Vault? And when you look at it on a homepage, it seems like a calculator app. So if you're just watching on your kid's phone, you're just trying to navigate whether they got dumb shit or scary stuff on there, you can hide photo albums, secret photo albums. It seems like a calculator app, but it functions as a secret storage hub for photos and videos. What? There's also something called Best Secret Folder. That's the name of the app that you can download. And it's specifically meant to hide photos and videos. And so if you're having a private relationship with somebody, an affair, if your kid wants to keep something private from you because they know they're going to get in so much trouble for taking a dick pic or doing something in this place, they just hide it. And so it features things like password protection, decoy videos, and alarm settings, so that if anybody tries to access it, it alerts the owner, making it difficult for parents to access. Right? So I just put a couple of conversations in there just so you know about this. And then WhatsApp is also something that you probably know about. It's a widespread messaging app that allows text and video calls, photo sharing, and voicemails with users worldwide. So even if your kid doesn't have a phone and they get on the WhatsApp, it's quite easy to communicate with anybody. In fact, when I got our Instagram page hacked, WhatsApp was the only way that I could connect with people to get it back. And it is so interesting to me about, how you don't even need a phone number. It's very untraceable, untrackable, because it's just something that is ascribed to you as a user, and then people can phone you on that or connect you on that place. Apparently you must have a phone number to create a WhatsApp account, but still there are reports of accounts being opened using fake phone numbers, and parents should monitor their child's use of WhatsApp even if they don't have cell service. This is getting exhausting, and I'm sorry, but this is like, I'll get to the good part in a minute, in 8 minutes. Tinder, Bumble. If you're not familiar with these things, this is the interesting thing. Tinder in particular is a dating app that focuses on swipe left, swipe right. The feature the primary purpose of meeting someone and hooking up. This is how Tinder was created. And so once you swipe right on someone and you match with them, you are open to communicate via private messages like that. And there's an age restriction, of course, but kids can easily falsify their age and their profile. Tinder also creates matches based on location, creating a potentially dangerous situation for kids and teens by matching them with nearby users. So you can be like, who's in the area? Oh my God, let's just turn it on because we're having a sleepover and this is like really funny. Oh my gosh, let's swipe. Knowledge is power, my friends. Bumble is also similar to Tinder, but women have to make the first contact. So kids and teens can create fake accounts and falsify their age, creating the same dangers as Tinder. An old one that I've heard about for a very long time is something called Ask FM. And this app lets users ask and answer questions anonymously and is known for cyberbullying and sexual content. Like also YOLO, Telenym, and LMK. Anonymous polls are similar apps to consider, I put a couple of other things in there too that you can look up or ask your kids about. Kik, House Party, those kind of things. It's just an interesting conversation to have. So now I just also wanted to say, what do we do about it? Because of course, we're going to talk about the scariness of it all. I also wanted to make sure that we, put some things in there. I put in 2 hardware tips that I wasn't aware of. So at a bare minimum, Insist that your babe set up password protection on their computer. Now, this may act as a deterrent, like a thief having to choose between unattended laptops may not choose one that's locked down with a password. And the next step is a physical lock, like computer cables, or, when your kid has to leave their seat at school or in the library or the coffee shop without having to decide whether to bring their computer into the bathroom. How do we protect our information is something that's I never really thought about. And then second, things like malware. Is a generic term for all malicious software. So viruses are among a type of malware, and a virus is like a piece of software that secretly enters a computer's operating system and can manipulate its actions and damage it or hinder its performance. A Trojan horse, on the other hand, is like apparently like it's like innocuous, like apps or utilities that are used by hackers to insert malware into your operating system. And then spyware is the software that allows a third party to take information off your computer without your knowledge. So if your kid sort of downloads a Trojan horse, it's entirely possible that, they'll give the harmless looking software all the permission it needs to damage your computer or steal your vital information, including passwords and credit card numbers and all of those things. So in addition to, virus detection programs, it's essential that you warn your kids and other users of your household computers to be aware that, downloading software from the internet, be leery of it. And really in this idea, things like, location services, your camera on, all of those things become really tricky in this space. So as I always do in these workshops, I always want to talk about what are some tips for staying connected. And I added 5 of them here just for you to consider. I think number 1 is really important here for me, is that remember that this first, we all just want to be connected, to feel seen. This online world is the currency for connection in this season. Okay. So this is not about banning it and taking away. It is about being very conscious about how you use devices and having conversations with your kids about what they know, what they don't know. Get them to teach you. It's critical. 2, insist that your teen employs privacy settings on Facebook, Instagram, and other social media platforms. If the teen uses a shared computer for their online life, make sure that computer stays in a common area in the house. The other thing that, we're going to talk a lot about in our house now as a result of these conversations is it can be so hard to go back if you've had relaxed rules around this, but the enforcement of general norms against screen use and online activity, like no phones at the table, is a good place to start. As it, is a set time to turn screens and phones off, enforced on school nights or any other night. And we get so scared, about I want them to connect to their friends and I don't want them to be pissed off about it. Okay, they're going to be mad. All kids are going to be mad when rules are set. This is how they know. Nothing good. This is what one of my RCMP friends told me. Nothing good happens in the dark with a phone. Nothing good. Okay, nothing. So your understanding of, yep, you can chat till 9 o'clock, whatever that deal is, and then all the phones have to come upstairs. Central charging station. Because what happens is then you go to bed and they check their phone. I mean, I do this shit all the time, right? I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I start thinking about things and God, I should check that out. And then before I know it, I'm fucking ordering something from Amazon. Okay. So it is really difficult. The blue light that we get from that really is that, we talked about this at the top of the show, the stimulating of our brains, that becomes sort of an issue. But I really want you to think about that. If these limits turn out to be the bigger battles than you expect, then that will at least alert you to potential problems, right? The other issue sometimes that, I hear a lot about is burner phones. And this is an interesting thing to me, how kids are so desperate for connecting that they'll be like, yep, I'm putting my phone up here, no problem. Or that they'll put their iPad cover up to be charged and, you think it's up there. The ability to sort of not catch them. I want you to know the need for connection is so great. So being aware of the fact that, there's other phones that they can buy. that, you know, that they will sneak the iPads into places. This doesn't mean your kids are bad or horrible or that they're trying to be disrespectful. The pull to connection is pretty great, and an increased awareness of that for you and me in this season is important. Okay. Now, again, I did put here number 4, resist allowing kids to use screens or phones in their rooms, even if those devices are properly theirs. Phones may be too much of a battle and may be impacted and difficult to enforce, but try to keep their gaming screens, tablets, or computers out. This will help them get better sleep, and once again, will allow you to get a glimpse into, you know, how they're conducting themselves online. Now, guilty, because I need to get so much better at this as well. 5, if you want to monitor more closely, I put a couple of other things in here that I, you know, again, I'm on the fence about. So none of these things I endorse or have even tried, but I didn't know these things were there where you can take advantage of some of the apps or software designed for the purpose, like Net Nanny apparently is a thing, which allows you to control what websites your kids access and even warn you if your teen searches for an objectionable term like porn or penis or something, which is apparently an objectionable term. Secure Teen is another site that I read about that keeps call logs and allows you to read text messages. Pros and cons to that one. Teen Safe does all of this and more, including locking teens out of messaging when they're driving and allowing you to track their GPS. Pros and cons. FamiSafe, FAMI Safe, allows you to monitor usage at the very least, which is sometimes like data's power. And, you know, I don't know if you get this sometimes on your phone where it says like, you have been online for 5,000 million hours this month. And you're like, what the shit? So sometimes we don't even recognize we're doing it. And that data is sometimes helpful for us and our kids. Okay. Now I know we're coming up to question and answer section here. So I did put a little bit of a note in there. There's this beautiful website called Wait Until 18. And I really loved it. It's really about this sort of initiative that says, let's try to stave off the use of phones for a while. And so I put the link in there for you to take a look there. But then I also did, you know, what do we do when you have concerns in this way? So cybertip.ca, where you can, you know, if you have any concerns, if your kid's been exploited or you're concerned that somebody has been, you can make a report over the phone. There's a toll-free line there that I put in. Again, if you have any other resources that you found or discovered, I mean, please, you know, feel free to put them in the chat here tonight. And now we're going to step into some questions. Do we have some of those? Okay, amazing. All right. Oh, lovely. Since number 1, okay, so since too much screen time is compared to same effects as cocaine use, should I slowly detox the amount of time, or what would be the best way to reduce for more than 6 hours a day? Okay, so I'm not sure where that data is coming from. I think that when we think about the issues of social media and those kind of things sort of affecting the way that we operate in the world, initiating, you know, the dysregulation in our system, the increase in cortisol. I think that being able to consider cutting back some of those times means we have to be conscious about replacing it with something. Okay. So if we just say like, okay, no, we're cutting back now to 1 hour a night. That's all you got. Right. I want kids to have the ability to think about something else to do. But oftentimes it is in those moments where as we make this transition, tonight it's this, or guess what? Everybody's going bowling. We invited all the friends over and we're going to do this tonight. Or everybody's going for a bike ride. Here's the plan, right? Whatever that deal is, it's like, how do we slowly, I think, replace some of that screen time? And I gotta say, Erin is better at this than I am, because many times at the end of the day, you know, we're the first generation of parents that are so remarkably exhausted by the inundation of data that when we come home to our families, it's actually another source of then having to negotiate relationship and people. It's not like necessarily the time to fill your soul. And we feel sometimes where we just engage in, you know, watching a movie, or, you know, you watching your show and I watch my show. You know, there is something to the old adage of like a game board night, of, being able to go for a bike ride, or everybody jump on the trampoline, or, implementing that, even if it is one night a week. This is the sacred night where everybody gets to sit around and play cards. Everybody's going to learn how to play crib, or we're going to have the, whatever the deal is. And when you engage in those things and they're fun, guess what makes things fun? Snacks. Part of the whole thing is around how do we offer a little bit of alternatives? Not that I think we are required to keep our kids entertained 24/7. That is their job. They need to get very good at this sometimes. But insisting in some of those opportunities becomes our job. And the fight often doesn't seem worth it, because it's like, oh my gosh, it's just easier to do this. So that's true for me and you and everybody else. So being able to pick our battles, I think, is really critical. And if we set up ahead of time things like Tuesday nights, whatever, I'm making this up, Tuesday nights, no electronic nights in our house, right? We have some games. If we're too tired to play games, too bad. I don't know, but sometimes Sunday nights, like whatever that is, nobody gets to resort to their device. And it's really interesting when those rules sort of get set up in whatever way that is, and you talk about them beforehand. It's like, often one of the mistakes we make is we sort of, like, in the moment, we're mad and we think we're failing our children. So we're like, okay, tonight, no, everybody's lost technology. I'm so worried. I've just watched this thing. I think everybody's going to be corrupt and sextorted. And so nobody gets their iPad, and people are like, what the shit? It's the preparation for this that really matters. Here's what I'm thinking, team. I'd love to be spending a little bit more time together. Let's pick a night. Which night are we going to just devote to board game night? Are we going to devote to playing games or making crafts or whatever, is the thing in your family? And making a plan together before that or about that becomes really, I think, part of the key to the whole thing. Okay. So that's to your question, I think that makes so much sense. Should you slowly cut back? Yes. And also, I think providing the alternative is sometimes one of the answers. Second question: can you comment on lying in our youth, specifically about our ADHD kids, and how to help with that aspect in regards to social media, and just anything? Yes. Okay. So true. Okay. I get this question quite a bit, right? This kid's a lying, manipulative, attention-seeking, whatever the deal. Many generations that have come before us have wanted to avoid disappointing the people we love. We've wanted to avoid consequence for our actions, and all of us lie. The fact that you can catch your child in one is like, that will happen. Okay. If I want to engage with my friends online, if I want to spend more time just like checking out the shit that I love, and I know it's going to piss you off because it's 9 o'clock and I'm lying. I'm going to lie. In addition to the fact that if I have a logical issue like ADHD that, sort of impacts my ability, my impulsive responses to things, the first question is like, were you on the phone last night? Nope. No. And oftentimes that impulsivity sort of gets us into trouble because we're like, just a second, I didn't even have time to think about that. But the truth of the matter is that so many times we get into these places of not wanting to get caught, not wanting to, sort of do the things that you want me to do, to lose my privileges at things. I'd much rather, engage in something that is fun to do than having to do a chore or homework or any of those kind of things, right? So we tend to put like a massive, red flag around people, when kids lie. All kids lie. And the question isn't if you're going to do it, it's why. And so what is so important to you that, I got to uncover that as a parent. Why does this matter so much to you? Right? What do you love so much about, doing this thing? And it's often like, it's where I feel connected. It's where I feel competent. It's where I feel like, I get to do things that, are fun, and I don't really want to talk to you because you don't get it, or, anything like that, so I think that's part of the issue, is that normalizing lying, but really talking about the importance of, having honest conversations with me, right? And it becomes really difficult to trust you or anybody else when I can't believe the things you're telling me. And having conversations around, I remember, these conversations, don't you ever worry about calling me or telling me. You will never get in trouble if, and then honoring those things, right? So when those things become to fruition, or like, I'm really worried that this kid's using drugs, or mom, I tried marijuana, or, like if we set those parameters that, be honest with me about these things, I'd love to know about those things. And when that happens, our response becomes really critically important. Okay. That's the lying section. Next question. We've set screen limit times. They changed them. It's a constant fight in our, I love this question. Oh, there's more. Oh, okay. It's a constant fight and absolute breakdowns, meltdowns when we feel we have no choice but to take their phones away. How do you navigate screen time with teenagers, 14-year-old? And are these meltdowns common when you take away their devices? Yes. So here's, I think, the number one issue is that we don't like it. We don't like it when anybody's upset, but we certainly don't like it when our kids are melting down or having temper tantrums. Here's the issue. It is not if our kids are going to melt down. In fact, it is necessary. I say this all the time. The chaos is necessary to learn the calm. Meltdowns are some of the most teachable, important moments, not whether they have them or not, but mostly about how we respond to them. That matters. Okay. When I am fundamentally disappointed in a decision that somebody else has made, especially if it means a lot to me, right? Somebody, canceled this date that I was looking forward to forever, or when it matters more to me, when the investment of my heart and soul is in anything, I'm going to get more saucy if that thing is thwarted or taken away from me. Okay. And here's the truth. Like, access to social media and game time and access to their friends is like air sometimes. Like, this is how much it matters, right? And so when we're like, nope, you lost your phone, it's a pretty good motivator to get your behavior where it needs to be. But here's the problem with taking shit away from kids. You can't take away enough stuff to make them be kind. And if there's already a relationship in place, if there's already this thing, part of the deal is when they know the rules. Not in the moment. We have to make the biggest mistakes in snapping in the moment. That's it. You've lost your iPad forever. I'm taking away your birthday. I've said that like many times. I don't even know what that means. But anyway, I feel like some of the most important times in offering a consequence is when it's laid out before time. Here's my expectation of you, right? That you get home tonight by 11:30, or here's the consequence. Right? This is what I need from you to demonstrate this behavior. I'm going to give you a chance of doing it. I think you can do it. I think you're amazing. And if you don't, here's what you lose. And if those things are set out ahead of time, right? When we're like, we had an agreement. The idea is 2 hours of screen time tonight. We are now at 2.5 hours. Dad asked you and I asked you and nobody complied. You know the rules, but no, I hate you. I know, I bet you do, honey. And I know how much this means to you. We had a plan, and this is the thing we're going to have to stick by around here tonight. And enduring the meltdown and the disappointment and all of those things is probably the bigger teacher in the moment than trying to avoid it by just acquiescing. Okay, now sometimes there'll be times where we're like, you know what, shag it, keep it, it's fine, I'm exhausted, whatever the deal is, right? But I often say to parents, don't shy away from the fact that being able to have a struggle, being able to be disappointed in something, even meltdowny disappointed, that's normal. They need to put it somewhere. Okay. Being able to navigate that in the moment, particularly if there's been a predetermined rule or consequence that's already been set out, and that's the best way to go. But oftentimes we find ourselves in these like fits of rage when we're like, you disrespected me, you lose everything, which by the way is also normal. But those become a little bit more difficult to defend in that moment because everybody is losing their minds, right? And we're taking away the thing that seemingly matters the most to them in that moment, relationship to their friend. And so you can expect that they get mad. It doesn't mean that in that moment you acquiesce and give it back. It's like, okay, be prepared where you're going to play. Yeah. Okay. My daughter was interested in a pen pal. When I inquired, the only options are online. Even if you want to send paper letters, you need to create a profile. She doesn't understand my fear in wanting to sign her up for this. Any advice on what to say to her or how to actually find a safe pen pal? Great question. I think that oftentimes when we're involved in this process, it can be done safely. So your monitoring of that, you creating this together, being very conscious about having conversations. I'm not sure of any sites where this can be safe, but I'm sure there are some. I'm sure there's many, right? Oftentimes there is the need to connect to people. And I think it can be like an extremely healthy thing to do. So, the only thing I would do is like Google, be aware of that and work through that process with her and really sort of determine how we navigate friendships. Is there a person who you know that you can navigate this? Is there somebody, a family friend, somebody who, you have knowledge of that you can vet before that happens is sometimes probably the safer route. But if that's not an opportunity for you, then going through this process together, my thought would be that, you do it together and you monitor it. But brilliant. So number 5, what are your thoughts on Snapchat? Other platforms, parents can see what the kids are seeing and have seen, but everything disappears on Snapchat. Yeah. So there's a 24-hour disappearance on things. Snapchat worries me so much, man, but it is the thing that is very popular. So banning the Snapchat is certainly in your purview, and many parents are wise at delaying the use of Snapchat as long as you possibly can. One of the ways that I deal with it is I don't know if this is helpful, but my kids can't be on Snapchat unless I'm their friend. Now, they can make multiple profiles that you don't even know anything about, but at this point, I think I'm still aware of all the profiles that they have. So I see all the snaps that they make. Monitoring their friendship lists, who they've accepted as their Snapchat friends, really matters. And the issue is, sometimes people are like, no, we don't allow our kids to have Snapchat, which is amazing, and I think brilliant and admirable in so many ways. And it's like, okay, so sometimes when we say no to things, we also have to be careful that it's not happening anyway. So sometimes it's that ability to sort of like, okay, teach me about this. How are we going to use it? When are we going to use it? The longer you can delay it, the better. I would say that. And really knowing your own kids' maturity level really, really matters too, I think. Okay. Are there any social media platforms that you recommend? Not really. Like I don't know. There's nothing that I would endorse significantly other than I put a few of those names, just sort of to be aware in the notes. But I think it's really about our ability to have those conversations with our kids and knowing what they know. And I promise you, they know way more than you think they know. I have a 17-year-old who thinks he's old enough to now have the phone in his room overnight. I am adamant that he shouldn't have it in his room. He then asks, then when? I have said, so long as you're under my roof. Listen, if that is your rule, I think it's brilliant. If you feel like that is so critically important to you, then I think that that's worth it. I think that it's also important, when they're 1 year away from heading to college, from, maybe not living in your house anymore, the ability to set parameters around what is acceptable and to start to navigate that and see what they do with it is also really important, right? To give them the opportunities, right? Here's the rules around, dude. You can, let's try this out for a bit. I mean, you're going to be out on your own in 6 months from now, or I don't know, whatever the deal is, right? And I know you're going to have access to this anytime you want. Here's my concern about, getting your sleep, getting your rest, getting you through grade 12 or grade 11 or whatever you're at. So I'd still love us to be able to do this, for sure not on school nights, right? But maybe Friday nights, Saturday nights, whatever the deal is, right? Being able to sort of initiate some of that trust and, here's the rules, don't fuck it up kind of conversation. And knowing that they probably will. And then what are we going to do about it tends to be sometimes, some of the bigger questions. Okay. Is there anything else, Marty, that came?
Nope.
Okay, beautiful. Listen, so many good questions. I hope that's helpful. I really have to tell you, I super enjoy digging into this stuff, because I wouldn't have done it otherwise. And I hope there's just, I mean, again, there's always so many things that I wish I could talk about more and deeper and all those things, but I hope that there's some enough information here to just, get you thinking about it and to initiate some conversations, with your kids about what they know and what they don't know and what are the chat sources they use and how does it work and can you show me, and just being a little bit more aware of what's on the devices and what they're downloading, and those kind of things I think is always an important bet. And then having those conversations about, I heard a story about, or oftentimes this happens when people don't intend to send pictures of themselves and then they do. Like, if this ever happened to you, here's what I hope you know. And you could always come to me. And if you hear about a friend who's really struggling, like, man, I hope you told me, I promise you, I'm going to do my very best to do nothing but help, because this needs to be a safe place for conversation. So I think those become something that's really, really probably the most critically important in this process. And the other list of, in that list of resources, I hope there's a lot of things that, just, I want you to do some searching in your own time around some of the things that, we can take a look at, more, and more importantly, to just be more, knowledge is power in this space. And this is the first generation where kids know more about this than we do. It's tricky because their brains are still fairly small. So, this idea of being able to monitor and ask questions and do all those kind of things, never been more important than in this space. Okay. So thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for all those questions. I loved every second of it. The other thing that I will just tell you about is our next workshop. That happens, it's PTSD. So I'm going to be talking about trauma. That's going to be a heavy one. But I promise you it's going to be a good one. I'm going to talk specifically around what it looks like to get post-traumatic stress disorder in kids in family systems. I'll spend a lot of time talking about first responders and spouses. And I have such a love in this month of November talking about my work with police officers, first responders, their families. And so that is coming up on what date? So just stay tuned. Marty is going to locate that. Oh, yeah, right. Okay, thank you so much for that. November 7th. So it's always usually the first week of the month. So November 7th, 6:30 Mountain. I will put out some information on that, but certainly you can, tickets are already available, so you can secure a space right now. Just as always, it's $25 and you get a 7-day access. If you want to watch it as your team, with a department, with a whatever, we're so happy to send Marty an email. Marty at drjodycarrington.com, and we can get you hooked up if there's more than one of you watching it. And I'm going to pour my heart and soul into that one, as I do most of them. But this one is, I just really love to talk a lot about trauma and PTSD and how we just really often not only misunderstand it, but I think really don't support nearly enough what it looks like to suffer from, post-trauma. So, and all of us have experienced it to a certain degree. So that's November 7th. And right back here, 6:30 Mountain. And if you can't make it that day, of course, there is a 7-day rewatch. And so I hope you can then too. The other thing I wanted to mention before I let you go tonight is the podcast. I have my very own podcast that's launching on October 5th. And it's called Everyone Comes From Somewhere. 3 episodes are dropping on Thursday. And so I've always wanted to do this where we could provide more and more resources for people. And the podcast is the place I'm going to do it, because I really am so interested in this next season for us, building a community. If you've been here for a while, I've done online. I started doing Sunday night lives, and that turned into like weekday lives. And then during COVID, every morning at 7:30, we got up for coffee. And sometimes there would be 2,000 of us having coffee together. And it was such an important part of this community that we built here. And it makes me so sad to say, because of the road life and our babies and all those things, I can't do the mornings anymore. But I'm so interested in building this community back up, the way that we can be much more connected. And so I've got some ideas about that. So stay tuned also in October about how we can, I think, make some pretty sacred places online where we can all gather again. So the podcast, there's a rebrand happening. All of these things are a pretty big deal around here. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you joined us tonight. I hope that you found something useful tonight, that you'll have some more conversations with your friends and your family and certainly your babies. So in the meantime, take care of each other. Thank you for all of those questions tonight. And I hope to see you here next month at the next clinical workshop. Mwah! Bye for now, everybody.